they'll let you know I'm not your friend. Huh? I'm your mom's, I'm your dad, whatever the case may be, and whether you like me or not doesn't isn't factored in. You're not gonna disrespect me. Okay. And the rules, were plain and simple. If you can't play by the rules, I don't care if you're 8 years old, you gotta go.
Nah,
Okay, okay, okay.
nah, that's real. So let me ask you this: um, how important are the youth, and what role do they play in bringing our community together?
Well, they are the future. Okay, and they are going to inherit. They are inheriting, you know, the world, as we get older and as we move on. And so it's important. It's like like with my kids, people understand. I have this attitude that if life is fair, I would die before my kids,
Mhm.
and I want for them to be able to demonstrate to me that you can survive without me. Okay, so I push you out because as a parent, it's my responsibility to introduce you to as many positive choices as I can, not make those choices for you. Okay, because I believe an adult at 18. And you don't wait until all of a sudden you're 18, because as you're growing up and everything, what I'll do my best to protect you from the unforgivable consequences, but you got to live and deal with the forgivable consequences. Okay, because there's going to come a day I can't protect you from anything.
Mhm.
Okay, and that's why I push them out and to be able to, because I tell three things. Life is about three things: choices, consequences, and accountability. So, and that's pretty much what I try to instill and enforce.
Let me stop right there because we reached the
Gotcha.
20-minute mark.
Gotcha.
Um, but I definitely want to continue this conversation because
Gotcha.
I think I'll just break it up into two pieces.
No problem.
Um, wow, somebody
Go for it.
gather my thoughts real quick. In your opinion, what do you believe the current state of the Black community is?
The current state seems to be a lot of confusion.
Confusion.
Seems a lot of confusion, uh, whereas we don't seem to coalesce around a common agenda. And I think that's one of the things with the bus boycott and some of the things back in the era, we were able to organize around a common agenda, even though we're from different tribes and everything. Uh, but uh, we were able to focus on common goal. And one of the things was the voting right,
Mhm.
you know, because you've seen people that were being abused and killed simply for trying to vote.
Mhm.
Mhm. And it was right in your face. Yeah.
So, and when you say this confusion, what do you think is causing all this confusion? Because it isn't like we aren't aware. We have social media where everybody can get information as quick as possible, but maybe that's also plays a role in it. But people are aware of what's going on. So, what do you think causes this confusion? Even when we see police killing unarmed Black Americans,
Mhm.
Black children, or just anything that goes against our civil rights and our human rights within this country? What is causing so much confusion to get us all on one page and move as a community?
Well, even when I look around, I see the disintegration of the communities. When you go into any inner city and you just see so much deterioration. And I remember even growing up, if even though we think we lived in a project, if someone was struggling and everything like that, I remember this one lady was a single parent at the time. She had about 5, 6, 7 kids or whatever the case may be, and people knew she was struggling and everything. But they were, but we did things in such a way that then they did things in such a way that to not to infringe on your pride. Now, we cook a bunch of food
Mhm.
as one example. and then you would go over and made it seem like she was doing you a favor by taking that food off your hand because you don't have enough storage for it.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? You know, and you find and we had more of a sense of community, you know, and we of course then too everything was pretty much located in the community, the church, the school, the hospital, everything. Now we're so dispersed into it's like we don't identify with each other anymore. You know, and we talk about how much damage the police does, but you know, how much do we do to ourselves?
Mhm.
Same, you know, and we just don't really seem to value each other. It's because again, it gets back to the point where it's, you know, people they don't see where my survival is depending on you surviving, huh?
Mhm.
Yeah, so I've got to keep you healthy and secure. So you know, so me and my family stay healthy, you know, and secure, like you know, passing it forward. You know what I'm saying? You, but I just don't see a lot of that. You know, too often see each other as a threat. One of the things is like when I was teaching at Mound Street, they were talking about how bad the kids are. I said, I don't see bad kids. I see bad parenting. Excuse me, bad parenting, because too many young people today, excuse me, live in a world of delayed consequences.
Mhm.
And whereas when we was growing up, wherever you showed you, is where you got discipline. Huh?
Yeah.
I'm not gonna whoop you, but when we get home, I'm gonna whoop your butt now.
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah.
Okay? You know, because you know, and that's what again, you know, consequences came in real time. You know, even when we was in school, I mean, they spank your butt in school.
Mhm.
And I remember even when I got kicked out of high school for throwing the teacher out of class and everything, even though he had pushed me and everything, but it didn't matter. He was wrong. We thought defending himself and everything because again, he was a teacher. He was an authority figure.
Mhm.
And as a child, you weren't supposed to challenge that.
Mhm.
We don't today, you know, you don't have that. I mean, even with the police and everything, you didn't challenge authority figures,
Right.
you know. And even when we were growing up, someone in the community, if your parents went home, if they saw you, they could discipline you or say something to you. Nowadays, you know, it's a whole different environment. Yeah.
And let me ask you this, because I know it might come up as a question.
Yeah.
So let's say a kid is in that situation, or even yourself. You said the teacher pushed you, and you were defending yourself. Um, how does a young person defend themselves from an authority figure or an adult figure who is either sort of abusing their power or their authority over you?
Well, and the thing about it, and this is what I was able to take that experience and pass it on uh, to my kids, is that there is a system and there's a grievance system and process.
Mhm.
and and so instead of me, of course, like taking it to the principal, taking it to somebody, yeah, up the lines and things like that. You know, growing up in an environment, you know, even though we had been uh, taught and it was been enforced to not do it and everything, but that was a situation where we were briefly uh, he pushed me the third time he pushed me twice, and when he went to push me the third time is when
Mhm.
I handled the situation and I just took him and threw him and pushed him off of me
Mhm.
and everything. I didn't hit him or do anything like that. I just, when he reached out to grab me the third time, is when I just blocked him and pushed him aside. And so I mean, I didn't assault him. I just pushed him off of me.
Mhm. All right, and then just to wrap up this area of
Go
the
ahead.
conversation, um, a couple of questions just
Sure.
real quick. Um, what are some things that you are most proud of in regards to the Black community today?
Okay. Like, I mean, we have so many uh, successes and everything, but the gosh, where do I start? Becoming a little bit more politically active. You know, I see a resurgence of that. Yeah, and I and then in education. You know, it's you know, I'm beginning to see a resurgence of pursuing entrepreneurial opportunities. I wish that the communities would do a better job of recovering some of these stores, you know, make them community owned as opposed to having some of these other people come in.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay. And then these last two questions are gonna be straight through.
I got you.
Well, last three for this topic. Um, what are a few things to always live by?
Well, basically, two things I try to live by. First of all, do the right thing for the right reason, and the second thing is always look for a purpose greater than yourself.
Mhm. Also, two things Black men can do to better serve our communities.
Two things Black men
Mhm.
can better do to serve their community is, like you said, uh, to serve and to again uh, remind yourself everything that you experience is intended for you to grow, pass it forward, so that you leave a legacy behind.
Mhm.
You know, so those following you uh, can continue to thrive and survive.
And then just going back a little bit so we can lead into this next part of the conversation. So I know you mentioned that you have leadership positions in high school um, as the president, and then all of a sudden you go from that to being kicked out of high school. Where does life project you then?
Well, actually, when I got kicked out of high school, yeah, I ended up getting back in because I was a drum major, and so I mean, so and down south, you know, that's that's a real,
Yeah,
it's real competitive.
yeah,
And so I ended up, that my ego and as a matter of fact, that's how, back to the incident, that particular day, I would sit there and sit next to the blackboard, and I was always surrounded by these females, who would do my work for me. And usually I'd be running my mouth and everything, but this particular day I wasn't because I hadn't eaten any breakfast, and my stomach kept growling. So I was trying to control my breathing so my stomach wouldn't be rolling. And so when I went to go out the door, that's when he pushed me back in because we had to have a chip or whatever. But how I ended up getting back in because the band, we were competing for the state championship, and so the band refused to march unless I was out front. Uh-huh. And so that me with my little head, my ego and everything, because I was real management challenged anyway. And so, but uh, back to your question about, I was always in those leadership positions, but it didn't have the maturity. You get the little cockiness because you get all this attention and everything, and then when you leave school, you go back home and you go home and you're hungry.
right.
And, you get kicked out of school. One time I got kicked out of school because I didn't have a belt on, even though, and the rule then, if you had belt loops in your pants, you had to have a belt.
Mhm.
My pants weren't falling, but I didn't have a belt loop, so they sent me home. So this type of rebelliousness and everything. But back to the leadership thing, I always ended up in those leadership positions, and a lot of it, in part, had to do to my mom by me being the oldest child, because when I was 8 years old, they were sending me downtown to pay bills. You better bring the right change back.
You learn quickly.
Yeah. And even to the point, like my mom would tell my sisters and brothers to do something. They said, "But Junior said," she said, "But I'm your mom." They said, "Yeah, but Junior said," So not realizing, because I started working when I was like 8 years old, doing papers and always about that hustle, stuff like that. So ended up at an early age having adult responsibilities. It kept setting you up for those positions by, uh, because of what had been ingrained in you without really knowing it. But then, but not being educated on the responsibility that comes with that, that and everything. But even when I went into the military, ever since basic training, I've always been in a leadership position, things like that, simply because I have been exposed to responsibility, knew how to handle responsibility uh, and everything. But I was still a late bloomer when it came to getting rid of that project mentality.
Mhm.
But I've always uh, just fell into
Yeah.
those positions.
And you mentioned the military, and I know that you've before off camera we had a conversation where you worked for the White House.
Hmm.
Um, you said even going into the military, you still had this project mentality, and you still had some maturing to do. In what area of your life did this? Um, what is it? Graduation to maturity begin for you?
Probably last year. but really, when you stop and think about it, when you are in a high stress situation, either high stress or you are extremely relaxed, you go back to your roots.
Mhm.
Okay. And because like I said, even though, like I said, I was in terms I was didn't work in the White House. I was providing security on the helicopters
Mhm.
and everything. And I think one experience I remember when I was standing in Chicago, I was standing at the steps waiting for Nixon to come off the helicopter because I was the team lead, but I couldn't get any of my team members to actually go out there. And all of a sudden, I'm getting frustrated. I said, "Man," I said, "these people really trust me." And I said, "Because all I've gone through in this Jim Crow South, here I am, young black man, all that, going through that Jim Crow South, standing next to the most powerful man in the world with a loaded 45. You know, I mean, and this was during the height of all the riots, all kinds of activities that was going on. But that's when it dawned on me that, when people trust you,
Mhm.
you don't betray that trust,
Mhm.
and you clean up your act, but you still go over here and do your thing. But you don't allow yourself to betray that trust
Right.
and everything. But it's a gradual process, and you always. I still don't think I still haven't reached that plateau yet because sometimes I have to kind of catch myself to reel myself in and not overreact to some things.
And I'm glad that you were honest and open about that because I think it's often that we confuse this where we think, all right, if I just get to this point, then everything is going to be good from this point on. It's like, no, it's a continuing. Um,
There's improvement process.
exactly.
Hmm.
And so, with that being said, what are some other lessons or experience that you have when you served working security with the White House that you, I guess, hold on to and still carry this day?
Like I said, it still gets back to that trust factor.
Mhm.
It really gets back to that trust factor, and uh, it's been so many. Even when I moved on, became a commander, and everything else, is that you don't betray. You do everything you can to not betray the trust people have in you.
Mhm. Um, I guess now I'm going to end it off with this. Uh, Well, first, let me ask you if people want to get in contact with you, because you work as a real estate agent currently
Right.
today.
Hmm.
Um, so, if people who want to get in touch with you, pick your brain. Well, even before we get into that, how did you transition from security to the White House into real estate?
Oh, I got into real estate when I was about to retire from the Air Force down at Keesler Air Force Base, and that's when I first got into it. And real estate kind of fortunate opportunity where you're an independent contractor.
Hmm.
And those of us that got certain personalities, you don't do very good working for somebody. Okay.
Yeah.
And I told him, I said, I didn't have the best of an attitude when I needed you. Okay. And now that you're retired and everything else, but real estate, afforded me an opportunity to also help people who I can help people find homes
Hmm.
and also rent something that's affordable.
And then, lastly, just to close everything out, just finish this line for me. Today is today, and
Tomorrow may not come.
There it is. This is the 20 minutes or less room. Give y'all another video.